Want to welcome everybody back to the Coaches in the Mouth show. Got a great guest today. We'll introduce him in a minute. We got Coach Bray Cook, head coach of the Pea Ridge Blackhawks. We got the Mouth Brent Bender here, and special guest in studio, the head dog at Fayetteville, head coach of Fayetteville Purple Dogs, Casey Dick. Casey, great to have you here today.
I appreciate you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure to sit down, visit with great people, great coaches, and obviously talk a little ball.
Well, let's get into it pretty quick. You know, we did a show last week with Buck James on here and all the movement going into 7A Central. We did a recap story about it. And one thing we want to do is get your point of view on this. Is everybody up here in the 7A West kind of winking their eyes with all the movement going around, and, you know, they've kind of dominated the 7A the last 6 years. You went in the finals with Bryant, probably played them as good as anybody a year ago. What's your take, and what's kind of the talk of the coaches on the side in the 7A West with all the movement?
You know, with Coach James leaving, you know, the program at Bryant, you know, in our opinion, is not really going to suffer a change just because of, you know, the amount of a great job that he's done. You know, that obviously takes some time to build that program the way that he did, build it the right way, which he has, and been able to maintain. Obviously, what he's been able to maintain over a long period of time has been something, you know, pretty special in our industry that doesn't get done a lot. I mean, I can't tell you, you know, you can look at a couple of programs across the state, but, you know, him doing it at the highest level and then doing it back to back to back is something special. And just a buy-in that he has from his kids. You know, obviously he's got a great staff there with Quad coming back, and a guy that really knows Bryant, that's been from that area, that knows the kids. Obviously you can see it on social media. The kids really, and the community really rally around him when they announced him to come back. So you know, there's not going to be a big step down from there at all. You know, but everybody understands where Buck is at and where, you know, where he's going, with going to Conway, and the job that he'll do there is that program was already in great shape when Coach Fimple left, as he's put out there. And, you know, he's there not now, and I'm sure just trying to put his touch on it. He's got great coaches at Conway that do a great job. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, as you step back, you know, in a couple of months, 4 or 5 months later, and just kind of see how everything winds up. But, you know, they're in a great spot with where they are now. He's just there trying to put I'm sure just trying to put his kind of fingerprint here and there where he can to make sure, you know, that things go the way that they need to go for him.
Well, I tell you what, and I think you nailed it. But then you also got to look, you know, and Claude's been there going into Bryant, obviously, and Brent, the Mouth made a comment, you know, the 7A still runs through Bryant until somebody beats them, obviously. But could there be a shift and change a little bit? I mean, there's a little bit more consistency as far as coaching staffs up here. They've had, you know, even at Bryant with 2 coordinator changes, there's more consistency up here. You've got a big-time quarterback, which we'll talk about a little bit later. What's your mindset? Obviously, you know, you're looking at your non-conference as you go, and open up with Cabot in it.
Yes,
and Cabot's, you know, they're going to be right there in the mix.
Right,
I mean, you're going to see them twice usually.
Yep.
I mean, if you're lucky, but what's the mindset here? I know you're looking at your conference and what you got to do, but you got to be peaking overall because, you know, your program is right there with them and anybody in the state.
You know, I think one of the big things you want to, as a staff from year to year, is you want to have cohesiveness from year to year as much as you can. You know, not only does it help your staff, but it also helps your kids, it helps your school, it helps your community. So it's kind of the trickle down effect. You know, kids know who their coach is going to be, coaches know who their kids are going to be, that they're going to be coaching, so on and so forth. So it's unique in that aspect that, you know, at Fayetteville, we've been able to do that minus, you know, a coach here or there every year since we've been there. So it'll be pretty awesome just to maintain that. But, you know, kind of like I said earlier, those guys down at Bryant and Conway, even with the shift, you know, it's the two, you know, most important people that he's going to be able to hire is going to be his assistant coaches. Well, I don't think those guys are really going to change or, you know, move or go do a whole lot. So I don't philosophically think that they're going to change a whole lot. Like I said, they may shift a little bit here and there, with Buck going to Conway and Quad going to Bryant. So, you know, that they're 2 great football teams. Is at the end of the day, that's who they are. That's who they are every year. That's who Cabot is every year. obviously we're up there with those guys, and from an expectation standpoint, and playing them every year. So it's unique to watch every year, because you do, as the season goes on, everybody's trying to figure out, okay, where do we want to be? Who do we want to match up with? How do we want that to look? So it's, you obviously, the last couple of years, you want to try to get on the opposite side of Bryant until you go play him in the state finals. But every year is unique. Every year is different. But every year is also one to where you don't really, everybody thinks they kind of know what's going to happen. And then it usually doesn't end up that way. But the last, 4 or 5 years with Bryant doing what they've been able to do, been really, really special, and kind of just a unique thing to step back and watch, actually.
Let's talk about your non-conference schedule. And people don't realize how hard sometimes that is to put together, and you got to do what's right for your program and that part of it. Talk to our audience a little bit about how you work a non-conference schedule. In the part of it is, and I get this, and there's different philosophies on this, is, you're playing a Cabot. Well, you played them in the playoffs.
Going to see them again.
Yeah, you're going to see them again. And some people don't like that. They want to see them one time. But the way the state of Arkansas, especially in 7A, is built up, it's hard not to, catch a non-conference game.
Right.
A couple of those guys. I know you're going out of state also. Talk a little bit about your non-conference schedule and your mindset and when to set it up. A lot of it is just when you're in a program like you're at, and the success y'all have had is getting games won,
right, and
then trying to set it up the right way for your team.
Yeah. There's a logical, distance that you obviously want to travel. So, pretty much like 2 years ago when we were trying to put together our non-conference schedule, we pretty much drew a circle around like a 400-mile radius and said, all right, like here, 300-mile radius, here's where we can go. From Kansas City down, Tulsa over is really about as far as we want to travel into Oklahoma. With obviously we played Owasso the first 2 years, and then in the state of Arkansas, you don't really want to drift off too far into the 7A Central, because the likelihood, as you said, of playing those teams for a second round, it's going to happen. Our first 2 years at Fayetteville, we played Conway, twice, and won the semifinals. Where, so you look at, it's very unique as far as how you piece it together. And then geographically, it's kind of weird too, because it's either, you try to find somebody in the 7A Central, there's 3 hours. If you're driving down to Little Rock, Kansas City's 3 hours, Tulsa's an hour and a half, and then if you don't have any of those schools, you're in Texas, or you're looking to piece together a game, which again can be unique also. So, geographically, you're kind of tied to a couple of schools based on how big you are, who wants to play you, who doesn't want to play you, and obviously, what you're trying to do for your program too. So it's not as easy as some of the smaller schools and classifications, that there's more schools obviously to choose from. So you kind of have to be, strategic in how you piece all that together and what that looks like for your kids and your program moving forward.
There's no doubt. And people don't know how hard that is to get together. Because your team's different every year.
Every year.
Sometimes you got a senior loaded oriented team to a young team,
and you're trying to think in advance when you're putting it together. From all right, well, in 2 years, what's this going to look like? 2 years down the road, and it may look completely different than what you have right now. And you just don't know that. Exactly.
Ray, you comment on that. Because you've had to revamp your non-conference schedule. You have with the new cycle. Let's get into that a little bit about the approach with. I was always looking for. I'll be honest with you. When I was doing it, was one that's going to be really competitive. One I pretty much knew I could win, and then the other one, somebody that was going to be a really, really strong team, and try to. And if we went 2-1, we went 1-2 out of it. It went, we were getting better.
Right.
You've had to deal with that too. Talk to the behind the scenes part of that.
Yeah, we were in the same boat in that Shiloh was our non-conference game before we got bumped up to that 5A, or before they got bumped up to 5A, and so I got thrown into our conference. And for us, it's kind of a little bit of a rivalry game for us playing Shiloh. Great program over there, but there's always some intense games between Pea Ridge and Shiloh. And for us, we lost that non-conference, but we wanted to replace it with another non-conference that was equally as exciting, which for us was Gravette. And Gravette's another team that's very similar to us as far as their growth and kind of where they're headed. And so that was our first go-to, was they had an open spot, and we wanted to create a game and a matchup that was exciting. And for us, it's Gravette. So that's what we opened with next year. Opened with them last year as well. And then next year with a little bit of shift, and there may be a chance that we have to replace them as well. I've heard there might be a chance that they bump up with us. So,
well, and now with all the classifications with private schools,
Changes.
them moving up and changes. I mean, I get a phone call today, want a team that's in our conference where I'm at, they're moving out, and you just got to kind of deal with it, and you got to kind of know those things before you do it. Let's go a little bit summertime. Mouth, you were down. You saw Coach Dick's team the other day without their stud quarterback, and you saw, let's see, North Side, South Side, Russellville, Greenwood, Fayetteville, West Memphis,
and North. Did you say North Side?
Yeah, I said North Side. And then we'll get into Casey about their yearly calendar and what they're doing in the summer. And those coaches are actually out there working and not getting paid. Isn't that something?
I will tell you what. South Side is going to be a lot better this year, I do believe. Colby Branham just mashed people. I believe Coach Dick, I saw him mash one of your guys
Hey, don't hold back, Brent.
But that's okay. He's going to mash a bunch of folks.
He's the D1. He's top one lineman in the state. He's going to mash a bunch of people.
He's going to mash a bunch of people. Don't get your feelings hurt over that. But West Memphis, Coach Hooks has he has some dudes out there now. They're athletic. If I were a betting man, I'd say in the East, he's going to have finally a breakout year at West Memphis, I would think. Northside had some good looking guys. They sure did. Russellville, Greenwood, they all look good to me. And at the end of the day, I was talking to these coaches in blue hats, and goodness gracious, I was talking to Springdale Harbor. I thought I was talking to Southside. I said, because I asked somebody, I said, which one of you is Justin Key? And they said, none of us. I said, aren't you from Southside? Then I looked on their shirts, and it said Harbor. I said, excusez-moi.
Oh, they do look like. Coach Dick, go into a little bit about your mindset in the summer. I mean, everybody goes to it as, the team camps, the 7-on-7s, the workouts, and getting them, making your team make sure they're physically ready to go. The first game, people talk about shape and things. I still think you got to play a game, get in ball shape. I mean, you can take people out and run them and do all those things, but you got to get them as close as condition as possible. Your mindset with team camps, you've already done two. You've done one at Northside, one at Greenwood, all in a week, and coming out of spring ball. When you're setting up that calendar, and I'll go with you too, Bray, on this. You're setting up that calendar for the summer. You don't want to. It's a fine line. You don't want to do too much. Then you don't want to do too little, and you got to know your bunch. And injuries and things pop up during those times. When you're setting that calendar, and I always say this, I used to laugh all the time, sitting in December working that calendar, but then you add that last team camp in July, and you're sitting there questioning yourself, what do we do? It was a great idea in December. Go into that, and Bray, you follow up with it. What's your mindset set? When you're doing your yearly calendar, what do we need to do? And you hadn't seen spring yet. You don't see it till the calendar's already made. What do we need to do? What do we need to pull back on? Right. Who do we need to pull back?
I think everybody has a preliminary plan based on when your football season ends, and then where you see your trajectory kind of headed into next year. So you make it based off, you haven't done an off season, you haven't seen your kids grow, you haven't seen them do anything yet. So you're making a calendar, kind of assuming this is where we're going to go from point A to point B, but you don't really know, the pieces of the puzzle and what it's really going to look like. So, like you said, you make a calendar in December, and by the time you get to the end of spring ball, you have a lot better understanding of, who you're going to be, what your team's going to look like. And then, what we like to do also is take those days and kind of divide them up between if we have 8 days, obviously you have 14 camps, 3 7-on-7s. We very rarely hit our 8 days, but we also, if we go to those 14 camps in June and we say, okay, here's our growth, here's our trajectory, here's what we've been able to accomplish, here's what we've been able to do. There's a lot of times where we'll scale back that last one, because if we like where we're at, my first 5 years when I got into it, I was in Texas. Well, in the summertime in Texas, you couldn't do anything. So
you can't even talk to them.
You can't even talk to them.
Yeah.
You can't work. You can. Some schools work them out, but you can't do any. Back then you couldn't do any football related drills. You could do nothing but weight workout and sprint work or conditioning workout.
One of the crazy things, and this is a long time ago, and we'll get into that, but you're right. I was at El Dorado. We were scheduled to play Texas High, and but back in the day, you kind of sneak around and go look at people and all this deal. Well, they're playing the 7-on-7. It blew my mind. They're out there with no helmets,
Can't coach it,
and they got some kid, former player out there with written down plays, cards, or whatever, and the coaches are sitting on the rail side or sitting in the bleachers. And we've got it really good in Arkansas where our kids are coached all the time. I mean, that's a huge difference.
I mean, when you sit down and you take the amount of plays that you get from, let's just say you do 14 camps from an offense and defense, what it really comes out to be is about 2 scrimmages, honestly. So that's what I tell our guys. I'm like, listen, like those first 5 years I was there, I can not doing anything in the summer. Then I come here and I'm like, we're doing way too much. Plus you get your 2 weeks in August right before you start fall camp, and then another scrimmage. So really, you're putting the ball down before a meaningful game, and you're really playing about 3 scrimmages before you actually, kind of get going. So, but then you fall in the trap like we talked about before we came on. Are you doing too much? Are you doing too little? Are you doing just enough for your kids? And I think it all is, where's your program? Where are your kids at? A lot of it revolves around how experienced are your guys at understanding what they're going to be doing. So it's kind of just a mix and match of kind of how things feel as you progress from spring ball, you get into the summer, and then you really kind of sit down and say, okay, what do we want to get accomplished in June? Then when you have your plan of what do you want to get accomplished in June, it's how can we space that out to where our guys are fresh, they can go compete and get those, 35, 40 plays at a team camp, and then turn around and go to a 7-on-7, because you got to make sure you're taking care of those guys as well. So it all kind of just encompasses together, and we try to piece it together as best as we can based on the guys we have coming back, some experience, but also do an equal amount of team camps and 7-on-7 to get everybody kind of in the area they need to get into. 7-on-7 does have a lot of positive things. I know some people don't think it does. It's it's hit or miss, and some obviously 4 seconds is kind of a longevity there, and obviously from a quarterback,
this guy
playing there,
quarterback.
Playing quarterback. I get it, I understand it, but it's great for receivers. And the thing that I love about it is it really teaches kids an understanding, a situational awareness of understanding. So that there's some positive things that come from it. There's a lot of continuity that's built, a lot of teamwork that things that people don't understand from behind the scenes. A lot of just camaraderie that's built also from playing 6 or 7 games in a day as well.
And I always thought 7-on-7 was the conditioning.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't a big, I'm an old line background a little bit, so I wasn't a big 7-on-7. We did a lot of them, but it was conditioning. Guys were running harder than I could take them out and run them, and they got to compete. Bray hit on about your summer deal, and like Casey said, is you got to know your team, and then you got to know when to. The guy, old coach told me this one time. You got to know when to hit the gas, and you got to know when to take your foot off of it. And I think to be successful, you got to do that. But you're playing total different deal here. I mean, you're a 5A school, big school also, but not dealing with as many numbers as Coach Dickey is. What's your mindset going in this summer?
So I've got two things we're trying to accomplish this summer, and one is we just hired 5 coaches, and that's a new OC and a new DC. So we've got to get reps, and we got to get the offense and defense in and get those reps, whether it's a team camp or it is a 7-on-7. Those are still very valuable reps and concepts we're trying to understand and mesh. And the other piece of this is we got 5 new coaches. We got to build those relationships with our kids. So there is the competition and the install and all the things that come with playing football. There's also the relationships and the fun and the little camaraderie and team building that has to happen. So we'll go to the 7-on-7 at Siloam. We'll go to your place.
Yeah.
And we'll bring the RV. And we'll
the RV.
Xbox and
Bray rides in with the RV. It's the only place that's air conditioned.
Oh, yeah.
One. And they play games, and every school is envy of the Pea Ridge Blackhawks when they roll up into Solomon Springs border war.
Oh, it's awesome.
I'll go in there and cool off myself sometimes.
And like you said, I'm an O-line guy obviously too. So I mean, yeah, obviously there's a lot of things we're focused on at the 7-on-7, but that's also for the skill guys. Those are littler guys running around, and they're doing great things, and I'm super excited for them. But I'll let our OC and DC kind of take that over, where I can sit back and build a team. So
well, and I've seen two programs built, one off JV. They put a big emphasis on JV and getting that winning ways. I worked for Coach Rescher at El Dorado, and that's really how they got that program started. Was, man, if you weren't a senior, by golly, you're playing the JV,
yeah,
buddy. And,
absolutely.
And it built,
and that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. It got them more reps, and we could play. As the head coach, and I was assistant at the time, I wasn't worried about anybody getting hurt unless they're one of my guys. Be honest with you, I mean, that's the way it all works. But those JV games, I saw him build a program there, that won a conference championship, went to the finals just on their winning ways. I've seen people with the same thing with the 7-on-7 where, they got a little taste of that winning and the competition part. It made a huge difference in the program.
Yeah, it is. And especially when you look at just, everybody understands how important, just overall team confidence is. And so that can be accomplished and done in a lot of different ways. It can be done from different groups, just like you talked about, from JV to varsity. It can be done through 7-on-7 team camps. There's a lot of different avenues that you can use to kind of connect those pieces of everything. So one of the things that we did also is go take those JV guys to a couple team camps in the summer to get those guys where it's just focusing on them. And that was one of the things that we felt last year that really helped our JV guys kind of get ready, because in spring ball you're focusing on everybody, but we're getting those guys ready to go play. But those guys, obviously with the mass amount of numbers that some of the schools have, we got to do some supplemental things in order to get those guys where we feel like they can go out and obviously be productive and feel comfortable with what they're doing. So that we actually take our kids about 2 or 3 of those JV team camps, and they've been really awesome for us just to watch them build and grow and really just obviously get them some reps.
You're finding depth. And it don't matter if you're in 1A or 8-man football or 5A or 7A.
That's the most important.
You got to find depth, because if you've got the same 22 that started in August, you're going to win a lot of games.
You're lucky
if you're any good. And you're right. It's finding those depth. Mouth, you've been out and you've watched a lot of these the team camps. You, like I said, you went over the other day. What do you think about this? When with your dad was a longtime coach, obviously you followed high school football. Just as a fan and a person been around it, what do you think about the team camps and the 7-on-7? How it's made Arkansas high school football a lot better?
Well, as a fan, I think it's wonderful because it gives me a place to go and watch a little ball. That's the big thing. But it's good. It's good where you can go see the teams where they're standing. If they've obviously, when you're sitting in the stands, you can see, this team's got some prospects right here. They've also got some suspects, but it's really good to see, because when you're in a team camp setting, your guys get to go up against somebody different. You're not always banging heads with
your own guys, which at the end of spring ball is
your own.
It's awful.
You're awful. It's done.
And everybody likes to see a different color jersey.
Absolutely.
At the opposite on the opposite line of scrimmage from you. So I think it's only positive, and I've only seen in the years my dad was athletic director at Forest City and El Dorado, and I've only seen the 7-on-7 and team camps just flourish even more. It's on a year-to-year basis. They get better and better and better. And I think, I know as a coach, you probably, because you can see your teams against other teams. You've got fresh eyes because you're seeing them against different folks.
Yeah, know where you stand. Know how you match up.
And that's true. Let's turn the table. Let's talk about your quarterback. I mean, Drake Lindsey's big time quarterback's been offered. and committed to Minnesota. Big kid. I hadn't seen him. I'll take it back. I have seen him live once, mostly on live stream stuff. You got to feel good about that. I mean, you got a big time quarterback coming in, and not putting pressure on here, but when Fayetteville's had a big time quarterback, they've always been successful.
They've been all right.
They've been pretty good. And trust me, I went through all the Allen years, and I suffered through all that for 6 years, so I understand all of it. And so, let's talk about him. Let's talk about his strengths and what he's going to bring to your team, and what it is. He's got that experience. He understands the league. He understands what it takes. Let's just talk about him.
I think there's a lot of different intangibles that he brings, just because of, if you a lot of people nowadays that you talk about having a returning starter, and everybody looks at. So one of the things, in kind of the kids' terms, is he's got some street credit coming back based on what he's already accomplished. He had a really productive offseason as well. I mean, he put on another about 23 pounds in the offseason. Wow. He grew about another 1.5 inches. So, I mean, he's about 6'5", 223 right now. So he looks obviously really, really good, physical, built kid. But the thing that he brings to the table is just the experience, and at that position with the guys that we're going to line up and play against and with, on a week in and week out basis, it's really important. Obviously, last year before we started, we thought we knew what we had, but as you know, the longer you do this, you don't really know, where you stand with all that until you get in and you play a season. And you see kind of how the cards unfold. But the thing that he did last year from week 0 to week 11 was he grew up in a hurry. You turn on the film against Cabot, and he'll tell you the same thing. The first week on Cabot, when we played, Coach Reed, and then week 0 to the rest of the remaining 10 weeks, he's a completely different kid from that week to those 10 weeks. And philosophically, obviously, we like to throw the ball around a little bit, and I think he completed 66% of his passes throughout the year, which is pretty high for a kid that's never really started a game before. But the thing that really popped out to us was he only threw 3 interceptions all year over 450 attempts. So that's one of the things that we loved, was he took care of the ball, but it just shows you he understood what we were trying to do and what the defenses were trying to do as well. So he's a very high level thinker, processor kid that gets it and obviously can distribute the ball. But consistency at that position is so tough, and he did it for 10 or 11 weeks in a row of distributing the ball, taking command, and developing to really be a leader of our team, throughout the offseason. So, he's got a great family, obviously, with his parents, his upbringing, the things that they've been able to.
Yeah, they got a little football background.
They got a little football background in the entire family. Obviously, Dad playing at Arkansas, then Dad and Uncle, those guys were super athletic and did a great job of bringing him up, and then his cousins and all those guys. So he's been around it his whole life, and when you've been around it your whole life, and that's pretty much what he does. He's just been a great leader for our team. From where we ended last year to where we are now. Just look for continued big things for him, obviously, going into the season.
You get that experience, and there's nothing more, and you understand this, and Brent, you do too, is that experience. Getting that guy, you almost get spoiled, then you get a new one. Obviously, I've seen it over time, is that first year going through it and they learn it, and then the next year you're giving them the script and practice, and they already got it memorized, and they're running the show. What does that bring to the table to your team with that experience at that position?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from him, what it does is it pretty much gives you another coach on the field, which is obviously highly valuable, because he can talk to those guys and explain to them what to do. But I think the biggest thing is what he can do is tell them why it's got to be a certain way, because he gets it, and he understands it. He's been through it. So anytime you have that experience at that position, it's like an added bonus, going into the season. And like I said, he's done a phenomenal job of throwing with those guys in the entire offseason, kind of getting those guys brought up to, where he feels like everybody needs to be. He's just a guy that you really got to kind of point in a direction, and he'll get everybody where you want to go based off his work ethic and what he does. But the relationships he has with everybody too is big. Like Bray was talking about earlier, he's got to be a guy that it's like riding a bike on the edge of the cliff. He's got to know when to get on the guys because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. But then he's also got to be the guy that's encouraging them, because they got to be out there, throwing or running or whatever it is when those guys are really doing the hard work. He's just he's throwing it while they're freaking running around and catching the ball. So he's, like I said, he's done a great job. So we're obviously excited to have him back for another year and look for him to do some pretty good things for us for sure.
All right, let's talk about the rest of your team a little bit. Strong defensively. Feel like, talking to you off the air here and talk to some of your assistant coaches, feel like, defensively could be a big strength for you. And in my experience, whoever's got the best defense from the road down to Warren Memorial usually wins. I mean, that's just my experience. And kind of an era right now where I go to a lot of games and think, does anybody even practice defense sometimes?
Who's going to score?
Yeah, I mean, but that's something you can carry on the road for you a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your defense, Coach Britt and Coach Heavy's over there. They're taking care of that. Talk to us a little bit about your defense.
First we got two coordinators that do an amazing job. Starting on the weekends, if when you're going, we do work on the weekends after a Friday night game, Saturday and Sunday, and those guys, you really don't even have to walk in the room. It's more walking in there and saying, all right, here, what's our plan for this or that, and those guys, they take care of it, and they are football junkies. They are latest and greatest of what people are doing. How can we gain a competitive edge? And we saw it last year with the kids that we have. We thought we were going to be an odd front team, a multiple odd front team. We had a linebacker go down, ended up going to a 3 high safety look like that, and it ended up being something that we stayed with the whole year because it just suited our kids. So they really, really bought into that, and we're able to try to transform our football team. But those guys do a great job from December to May with whatever it is that they feel like we need to, the direction we need to go in based off our meetings and stuff after the season. And then it's, kind of that's the first phase. And then phase 2 is in the summer. And then phase 3 is fall camp. So they really do a great job of taking all those things and really dividing them up, making it relatable to our kids, making them understand why, not only what we're doing, but why we're doing what we're doing, and then allowing them to go play, finding all right, here's your tools. And then, okay, what do we do really good with those tools? Well, let's take those and pair them up with everything and then really refine it to letting our kids go play. So you look at it last year, and we were a team that, quite honestly had a lot of question marks because the year before that we graduated pretty much everybody on both sides of the ball and didn't really know who we were going to be. And we came out and we were productive, obviously defensively and offensively, and had a pretty good year. But you have a lot of those guys from last year's team coming back. Like we talked about, experience at that level is enormous.
They're going to play faster.
They're going to play faster because they know what to do. They've been in those situations before. They understand situational football, and the amazing progression between a junior and a senior. You can't, a lot of people talk about, you can't put a price tag on experience, and you don't have experience so you get thrown in somewhere, and you got to figure it out. There's no other way for it based on, people can say you can do team camps, you can do 7-on-7, but there's nothing like those kids going out and playing on a Friday night and, being out there in the atmosphere and actually experiencing it and watching them grow up and then come around the next year. And it's like, you just got to remind them 1 or 2 times and they go. But, we've got really great coaches over there on defense with Coach Harris doing a great job at our defensive line. Feel like we've got some depth there coming back. Last year, we're really young. Coach Bowerman at our inside linebackers will do a great job of getting those guys ready. And then, obviously Coach Davis coaches our outside linebackers and our nickels. And the Coach Britt and Coach Lindley do our back end that, they're doing a lot of different things with the kids and a lot of different coverages and mixing it up. So like I said, that whole thing starts in December to get us to where we feel like we can go play late summer, early August, and be really productive.
Let me ask you this. Let's go move on the other side of the ball. Of course, we talked about your quarterback. Got a great running back coming back. You talked about earlier, offensive line wise. And I'll throw this out to you. Fayetteville's known for receivers also. They've had a few that can run fast. I witnessed that a few times on Friday night.
Just a couple.
And let's talk about your offense a little bit.
Obviously, like we talked about, you have Drake coming back, so that'll be a huge advantage for us in that experience. And then we've got kids that played last year at receiver as well. Our outside receivers, those guys pretty much all played. Our inside receivers, a couple All-State kids coming back that were there last year. So there's a lot of experience, on both sides of the ball of those guys being able to play as, sophomores or juniors or whatever it was. Now, you're just, as you want those kids to take that next step. What it look, now they understand, okay, here's how you go do this, but let's go do this really consistently at a really high level, week in and week out, day in, day out. So, and our offensive line is an area where they're getting better, that we've got to continue to make sure we're taking those strides, because as you know, when it's late in the playoffs or wherever you need to go, you're going to have those guys up there are going to win you football games. And you got to go play the teams in the Central who are going to be big and physical up front at defensive line. So those guys have got to be ready. So I think overall you're looking at a lot of experience coming back, just because of we were a young football team. Obviously 2 years ago, like we talked about, there was a lot of question marks that we had, that those guys stepped up and were prepared and did a great job of going out. So, I think if we will continue where we're at, then I think we'll be okay.
Well, that's great. And you're going to be in the mix. All right, let's talk about your league a little bit. And Brent's seen some of them. You've watched a few at team camps. Bray, you've done some stuff with Rogers also, I believe, in your team camp. Talk about the league. Obviously, let's kind of throw it out there. It's been between you and Bentonville here the last couple of years, and Bentonville West just kind of, Coach Pratt's had a couple of good runs, and Rogers just looks, boys, I'd say that. I mean, they're coming. And Chad's done a great job over there with that whole situation. Talk to me about your league. Once you get out of that non-conference, your conference part of, it's about getting seeds, and it's, where you can get there, getting in the playoffs,
Absolutely.
And then, championships and all that part. What's your conference schedule look like? And how do you see the league playing out?
I think it's competitive as it's ever been. I think you mentioned Rogers and the job that Coach Harbison does is, we had a brief stint at Fayetteville when he was there, and he's done a phenomenal job at going in Rogers and really taking, their philosophy and how it fits their kids and really watching them excel. And he's done a great job. Coach Grant at Bentonville does a great job sustaining success when after Coach Lunny left, and he's kind of put his own stamp on that.
And Jody and them do a great job. And the part people don't know is that staff's been together forever.
I was talking to somebody today, and I was like, from the time that I have come from Texas, which was, I guess, 12 years ago now, you can count on one hand the amount of coaches they've had to replace.
Oh.
Like they haven't left, which is kind of what we hit on earlier. The continuity part of that whole thing is humongous. I mean, when you're talking a period of over 11, 12 years to where they've replaced maybe 3 coaches. So you look
with people in their system.
You're right.
I mean, that's what's crazy.
So they may have to go hire one, but then that guy's been there for 5 years, and he understands, what's going on. So he's got two great coordinators, Coach Dana Howard and Cecil over there on the defense, that do a phenomenal job. That they really take everything that they need to mold their kids and do a great job. And like I said, Coach Pratt at Bentonville West, obviously working for him for 5 years, and he's very detail oriented guy that is going to get the most out of his kids week in and week out.
Best screen game in the state.
Best, always has been.
Best screen game in the state, right there.
He'll smoke and mirror it.
I'm telling you.
You look at Rogers Heritage, and the job that Coach Munoz did is, I think, one that's vastly underestimated. Based on what they've done and being able to accomplish previously. I think what he did last year, they're on the right track to get that program to where they need it to go. And their coaches did a great job. And I told them that after we played them, I said, what you guys are doing, you're doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
I said, everybody thinks if one person can go into any setting and turn a program around at the collegiate level or at the high school level, they think it should be done everywhere. And that's just not the reality of coaching. It's completely different every situation and everywhere you go. And he's doing a great job. He really is. And then, Coach Hobbs at Springdale he's a Springdale guy. They're going to be tough. They're going to be hard-nosed. They're going to play fast. They're going to hit you. And obviously with what they're doing offensively, it's going to be a change for everybody that we don't see, in our conference, somebody running the wing tee and doing all that stuff. So it'll be a different look for everybody there. So it's going to be as competitive as it's ever been. So how it will finish out, of just, the biggest thing that you're going to have to do, as everybody in this room knows, is go play consistent football every week. You're not worried about stay healthy, not worry about who you're playing or anything like that. Just go play ball. That's the end of the line.
Well, and I see that, and then obviously you got a new coach at Harbor,
Mm-hmm.
and so that their dynamics, and Coach Woodard has been there for 16, 17 years. Started the program. Started the freaking program.
Yeah.
He's old. I remember when the program started. That's how old I am. And they've got something new over there. So it's going to be real interesting. Who are your first 3 conference games?
We go Bentonville West, Rogers,
You play Southside late.
Yep. No, we go West Rogers. No, we go West. Yeah, West Rogers, Bentonville.
So, my God.
We're gonna
Holy cow.
we'll be rolling.
Holy cow, we're in or out early here.
We're not tiptoeing anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I do kind of recall that with your conference. I remember y'all's were real tough starting off. So nothing easy at all.
No,
there.
Go West Rogers, Southside, Bentonville. So I mean, you look at where
And
Bentonville West
Southside's-
has been.
that's
I'm
when-
about to say you look at Southside and Coach Damer down there is doing a great job. Obviously, and they've got some. Mouth hit on earlier. They've got some big offensive linemen coming back. They've got a running back, receiver, and then Coach Cox, obviously on the defensive side, is going to do a great job of getting those kids prepared. So I mean, you look at those first 3 games, and then on top of those, that non-conference schedule, we're going to find out where we are really quick. Playing Cabot, obviously North Little Rock, North Side, and then opening with Bentonville West. So it'll be a quick and be challenging. We're
Well,
going to
and well, it's very challenging because you got Cabot, then you got North Little Rock, who doesn't even have a coach.
Yep.
As we speak right now,
Right.
I've heard some rumors floating around a little bit, but nothing official. And then obviously Northside, they've got athletes in that part. So, but it'd be very interesting to see with how the league plays out. And we talked about this the other day, and I'm gonna let Brent talk about this. We're excited to watch the 10 games play out and the matchups with all the changes. Brent we talked about that.
I tell you what I see that, and I touched on it last week, and we'll touch on it again this week. If you are in the northwest part of the state, you can't find a better way to spend a Friday night spending $7 to get
in a game.
To get in the game, and then buy a popcorn and Coke for $5. You can't beat that, and because every week is tough in the 7A and the 7A Central, the 7A West, whomever wins those 2 conferences, you've accomplished something. You have walked the gauntlet for 10 games, and you are to be commended for winning this league, or the Central, either one. And I just think, usually in a conference, you have one game or 2 that you say, we can win no problem. I don't see that in the 7A West.
Mm-hmm.
You got to strap it up every week. Make sure your chin strap's tight and your shoulder pads are strapped on tight too, because somebody's going to knock your head off if they get a chance.
That's true. When I was doing it, back in the day, we talked about conference championships, not much. It was just getting in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because if you got in the 7A West back in the day, you got in, you had a chance to win the state championship.
Right.
I mean, because there wasn't no much difference. Just what you talked about. Don't think coaches don't pull that bracket out.
Oh yeah,
I did all the time.
Figure out where you're going to fit in.
Sometimes you might have a late loss, and it ain't that bad. It might seem bad to everybody at the moment, but you're getting away in matchup, because in the playoffs it's all about matchups. You understand that? You cost me a state championship. Bray did, and it was about matchups. When 09.
Yep.
My Southside team matched up good with Bentonville.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all didn't, and we didn't match up good with you. And it all plays out. We beat Bentonville, and y'all didn't have to face them, and you know how it works.
That was big. I always tell them.
Yeah, when we beat Bentonville, everybody over there in the harbor had a party.
Oh,
So that's
huge,
why it worked out.
huge,
right
huge
there.
night. We always said there's
You
2
sent
teams.
Coach Williams a check.
Yeah, exactly.
No doubt. There's a picture over in the other room in there. There's 2 teams I never beat, and that's Alabama and Bentonville High School. And so, when y'all knocked them out of the playoffs, I remember that was a big deal for us. We were excited.
I still need a check for that, by the way.
We'll take care of that.
It's in the mail.
Yeah,
Got lost in the mail.
it's coming. It's coming.
Well, let me ask you this here, and this is kind of getting into it a little bit for both of you, especially. And I'll give you one of my stories too later on. You've been head coach 5 years.
At Fayetteville, you said.
Yep, 1
One
year.
of every year.
When starting the 3 years there at Fayetteville, starting your 4th. You're going into your 3rd year.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned? I mean, and people don't even have a clue the things that when you get in that role, the crazy things, which I can, now I'm old and I can look back and laugh at a lot of it, but the things that you learned, and you've done it at 2 places, walking into Van Buren your 1st year and then all of a sudden moving to Fayetteville. And you've learned it too, and you were actually there with me as assistant, but then moved on. Let's start with Coach Dick. What's the most thing you went, wow, I didn't know that, or man, I gotta get a handle on this?
Yeah, I think when I first started, the biggest lesson I could tell anybody is if I was going to go into another head coaching role, the biggest lesson I learned from Van Buren and Fayetteville was the first thing you do when you go to a new place, observe.
Mm-hmm.
Observe. And do nothing but observe. And it's okay to let a week go and really gain a better understanding of your staff, your kids, by just observing. I was real gung-ho and went in and changed certain things on day 1, day 2, day 3. And I look back at that and some of those things I'd done, I was like, man, that's probably some of the dumbest stuff that I could have done, in that particular role at that particular time. It turned out okay, but it wasn't necessarily the right timing. Just because of things that maybe the program had already been through, or the changes that had already occurred. So I think observing, obviously, for me, would be the biggest thing that I would do over. And then the second thing you learn to do very quickly, and how to adapt to everything, is just taking the personalities of your kids and finding out the right coaches that you need to hire, kind of move around in order to place your staff, get everybody on the right seat, I guess you would say, in order to make everybody coexist to the best of your ability, for what you see as your program. So I think those are 2 huge things, because, those your assistant coaches are the ones that really go out and obviously have a big interaction with your kids every single day. So you want to make sure that those guys have those deeply rooted relationships like Bray was talking about earlier. But then, you've also obviously got to be that constant observer too. Okay, what can we change, tweak, adjust here and there in order to keep that trajectory going where you want it to go?
Makes sense, Bray.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. It's the relationships for me that I think that obviously they're important, and obviously it's a huge part of it. But then when you look at the whole big picture, are your assistants, are they gelling well with their positions? Are those kids getting along with each other? Is there a culture of, I've got your back on the football field, but I've also got your back off of it. And that's something that, I relate this to Coach Pittman all the time. That's kind of who he is. For that O-line room, as a player, it was one of those things that you're not somebody on camera and somebody else behind the scenes. You're one personality. You have these relationships with these players. And actually, Rick Davies yesterday, I was talking to him. Coach Davies?
Uh-huh. Very well.
Yeah. So he's now at Gentry. And he mentioned.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, he's at Gentry.
I got to call that guy. You be kidding me.
I know. I told him to come on. I told him.
That guy's in and out. Wants to sell cars for Coach. I got to talk to this guy. Come on, man.
He's back. He's back.
Got to make a decision.
He's back in the profession.
He's a great coach, a good man. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're absolutely right. And one thing that he said was, you've got these athletes, these kids for 3 years. And if you can't give them everything for 3 years, then you need to pull yourself out of it. And you're in the wrong profession. And that was talking about why he got out of it. And now that's why he wants to get back into it. And I thought that was awesome. Like, you're right. I mean, those kids are, we're sitting here talking about games from 2011, when back at Harbor when I was a player, and those 3 years are some of the best years of my life that I think about all the time. And I think about Coach Strubing and Coach Wood and the impact that they had on me as a high school player. And anything I've accomplished after that, I have to give credit to them for the program they were in and the things that, they taught me that I didn't appreciate at the time. But to me, now as a head coach, like, it's a very cool opportunity to do something special.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you my story. This is a good one. I was the head coach at El Dorado my 2nd year, and El Dorado
2nd year experience
as a head coach. As head coach.
How old were we?
I was 29. I still had brown hair back in, a little bit gray, and
find a picture.
Yeah, well, you have to dig deep. Only if the internet was alive during that time. But anyway, we play, and I've told Brent this one. it's my second year. We had a kind of a tough year, and I took over Coach Stretcher. And, we went to state finals, and we were rolling. And in my first year, we had 5 college prospects, but they all got hurt during the year, and the league was tough. And I was young, I didn't know what I was doing, and we didn't have a great year. The next year, not near as talented. We play Ruston, Louisiana, and Ruston and El Dorado go way back in the day, and they quit playing. You know that because your dad coached there. And they always played each other. Big game. Well, Billy Laird's there. Joe Ferguson was actually the offense coordinator. His son was the quarterback, and we had no business beating. Billy Laird's one of my heroes and great coach. They rushed for like 400 yards, just turned it over, and we got lucky, and we won the game. Well, at El Dorado, the stadium's downtown, and you got to drive back to the field house. Well, we beat them. And so, I mean, people are going crazy. I'm thinking, God, I don't know how we did this. It's unbelievable. So I get back to the office. My phone rings in my office. I think it's the superintendent. He's calling to give me a raise. We just beat Ruston. He's going, we pulled this off. Hadn't done in years. And it was an upset mama, upset because her kid only touched the ball 6 times instead of 12. And so that got to reality real quick where,
dropped it down.
No matter what you do, somebody might be getting pissed off. It's just the way it is. And so it really, that was an eye-opening experience was, everybody's celebrating. All of a sudden you're getting criticized for something, and we all worked it out. Yeah. Kid's a great kid. But those things you don't see as the assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You just, you don't see those things and everything. All right. Last topic here. And it's more for Casey, and Brent can chime in on this. We got Coach Nutt coming on, Coach Houston Nutt coming on here. We're going to take
should just had a big round.
Well,
we brought him in.
No doubt.
We're going to have him on in the morning. And what's your 2-part questions? What has Coach Nutt meant to you in your life? One, and what's the funniest Coach Nutt story you've ever been involved in?
Oh man, the funniest. This is going to involve a couple of other different coaches. So a lot of people know when you're a incoming freshman, one of the things that Coach Nutt did is he put you in different groups when you first came on the campus, and your job pretty much was to go throughout 2-a-days. And he would always bring you in and say, you guys are going to gel together. You had to stand up, sing the fight song, and then you got to stand up and imitate a coach of your choosing, whoever you did. So in our group was Kane Womack, now the head coach at South Alabama.
Yeah,
longtime friend. He ended up kind of not. He was in our dorm room right next door. So his deal was he could. It was amazing at what he could do just watching somebody for 20 minutes and figure him out. But he picked Coach Nutt, and Coach Nutt gave us a story at the end of the day. A lot of people know, Coach Nutt was a big basketball player. Like, he loved basketball. Him and his staff would always go play basketball. In the day after a staff meeting, after practice, whatever, they'd all go play. Well, he shows up to a team meeting one day in a boot. And he had ended up hurting his leg playing basketball, and he asked Dean. He said, Dean Weber, longtime assistant trainer there, been there 55 years, 50 years. Just got out there. The foundation. How long has he been there?
Dean has been the trainer at Arkansas since 1972.
Yeah. God, that was before I was born.
Yeah,
I'm 50.
Yeah, 1972.
Jeez,
forever.
Or 73, excuse me, 73.
So he comes in a boot, and everybody's asking what happened. And he looks at Dean. He said, Dean, you got to tell him what happened. So he ended up having he demonstrated this basketball move that he did on one of the assistant coaches, and he had spun around. And when he spun around, he had a high ankle sprain. But, the way that he did it was everybody was dying laughing because it was so hilarious. Well, Kane just takes the whole scenario of the situation, and when we get up in front of the team, he re-illustrates the whole situation to everybody. And the assistant coaches on the staff, they have fallen out of their chairs in the top row and just absolutely lost their mind because of what Kane has done. It's not ever the head coach that gets it. Usually it's a position coach or grad assistant, but he just went straight to Coach Nutt and did the whole thing. So it was absolutely hilarious. But I think a lot of people would say what he means to you would be he's such like a father figure to a lot of people. This one thing that I took, everybody was asking, well, what's the one thing you took from Coach Nutt, Coach Petrino? You had Gus Malzahn, you had all these different coaches that come through. What's one thing you kind of take it from that you figure out in a hurry that coaching is it is a people-oriented business. And it's not your assistant coaches. It's also obviously your players and everybody that surrounds you. But he didn't treat anybody differently. If you were a kid, if you were a GA, if you were a coordinator, if you were a position coach, if you were, his assistant, Miss Clerinder, for however many years, it was everybody got treated the same, because he truly cared and valued people. And I think when you look at that today, it's pretty simple to put it, just treat people the right way. Whether there's obviously times you guys sit down and have tough conversations, that's treating people the right way. You can do it the right way, but that's the biggest thing that I took away from him was just, it's all about the people in the business. And if we don't have obviously those kids every day, we don't have those coaches, and we're not coaching. One of the smartest things I ever did was when I first got the Van Buren job, Coach Chick took me down and let me talk to Rick Jones for about 30 minutes. And I asked Rick the same question. I said, if you could tell me one thing that you've learned in over however many years of being a head coach, I said, what would it be? And he said, Walmart. And I'm like, I don't know what Walmart. Rick, I don't know what you mean. And Walmart, like, what are we talking about? And he said, you got to be like Walmart. And I said, okay, Walmart makes a lot of money. Like, where are we going with this, Rick? And he said, every single person on this planet goes to Walmart. And I said, yes. But he said, and every single person continues to go back to Walmart. He said, make your coaching office or your coaching, whatever sport you are, make it like Walmart, where your kids constantly leave, but they constantly want to come back to be around your coaches, to be around each other. And I think that's one of the smartest things. It's very relatable because everybody does, everybody goes on Sunday, buy your groceries. You're always going back week for week because they have what you need. It may not be sport specific. It may be in life. It may be a life lesson. It may be you need to push in a certain direction. So that's one of the things that I've taken is, it's a people oriented business, but to be like Walmart.
Well, and I've heard him say that, and that's a great analogy, and he's right because you want, when we talked about summer, we talked about, your planning and all that deal, and is keeping them hungry to come back because
exactly
you lived in more of a world of a team camp. When I was playing, Brent's dad was coaching, and Brent was probably the same way. That night before the first practice in August, sitting in your bed, you're a little not nervous, you're anxious, you want to get out there, excited to play. And I think you got to keep that at all times in your program to be successful. When a kid,
especially nowadays.
Man, they got
more important than ever. They can go do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
And don't even have to walk in the door.
It's unbelievable. Let's go with this too before we leave here. You're former Razorback, got two former Hog here. This guy's dad was a legendary coach at University of Arkansas. You've got to watch them a little bit in the spring. Bray, you have. We're going to talk on them a little bit during the year. What's your outtake? You've seen Coach Pittman come in. I see at games all the time. And there's a pride about Razorback football, obviously, for all three of you guys. And me, I'm just a fan. But what do you think about the Razorbacks, Coach Pittman, where we headed? Coach Eno's coming back in, new hires on defense. Just, as an alumni, former player, you've been to some practices, went to spring game. Just your take. And
I think there's a lot of just real genuine excitement, like Bray hit on. That's who Coach Pittman is. He's a blue collar guy that fits into the people of Arkansas really, really well. He can have real authentic conversations with anybody. It doesn't matter, who you are, where you're from. It helps that obviously he was born and raised not too far from here, just across the state line. But I think that's who he is. He's got a lot of similarities in that aspect of Coach Nutt. There's a lot of similarities there between, how his care is real and it's authentic. And for the people, obviously, for his players, for his staff, and his staff will tell you that. I think any of those guys, even if somebody that's left, they'll all tell you the same thing. So you look at that, and you mentioned Coach Enos. I think everybody's excited to see, okay, what is Coach Enos' offense going to look like with KJ? How much under center are we really going to see? How much RPO are we going to see? how much real true drop back pass or move the pocket are we going to see? So, when you look at all the places Coach Enos has been, one thing I think he's done an amazing job is adapting to the kids that he has. It's not, all right, I'm going to be a pro style offense, drop back I formation guy everywhere I go. He does a great job, whether he was at, when he was here with Austin and Brandon, and he's been at Maryland with Tua's brother, and he's just done a great job everywhere he's gone as far as molding those intangibles that his guys have around his certain players. And then I think one of the things that they've done as a staff just holistically is recruit really well. I think there's a genuine excitement about you can walk in the door, and I think people want to have an interest of coming to play at Arkansas, which is obviously what's unique at this state, because it's very, again, we talked about it, high school wise, it's very unique geographically. Well, geographically in the SEC and in Arkansas, it's even more unique because of the surroundings that it has, and then it being the only major Division I institution in the state. So that's something else. But you're also close to Kansas City, Tulsa, Dallas. You can go down to Louisiana, get some kids. So I think he's done a great job of really going in and having the brand of real authentic, genuine, to where kids are interested in coming to play in Arkansas.
Bray?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything Casey just said. It's Coach Enos. I GA'd for him, so
that's right.
So yeah, Taylor Reed and I can tell you how he likes his coffee and everything. So my beginning of coaching was 2 years working for him. So I mean, I know kind of what he's hit, the ins and outs of who he is and what he does, and it's awesome. So I'm excited about his offense, and like he said, he's gonna adapt and do things to put those guys in positions to win. So. If those guys will buy into what he's doing, I think we've got a shot to be all right. And of course, the O-line, Coach Kennedy does a great job. He's a great recruiter. I'd go play for him. So they'll have the dudes and they'll have the X's and O's. So excited to see what they can put together.
All right, Mouth.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I'm most excited about from the beginning of Sam Pittman through the spring game this past April. What I'm most excited about is for the players, the older players that remember what it was like to be Razorback and be a great team. Casey, you were part of some great teams at the University of Arkansas. You were the starting quarterback. Bray, you were part of some great teams at the University of Arkansas. My dad was part of great team. 122 in a row, 1964 and 65, and a national championship. Coach Kim Dameron was part of a great teams playing for Lou Holtz. And
Scott Reed.
Scott Reed.
Do not
forgive me for forgetting.
Got to tag Scott Reed, and we got to get him right.
He will kill me, right? But I mean, bless his heart. We went through 3 of the worst years the University of Arkansas should have ever had to go through. 4 years. Well, Bielema had some good years. We went through the John L. debacle. Then we decided we're going to replace Brett Bielema with hammer down the left lane, Chad Morris. He's the only coach I've ever known that's been fired at Allen High School. So that ought to tell you
there
something.
we go. We've opened up the can, haven't we?
Oh yeah,
we've got it going now.
But now we got a coach that wants to be here. That his son's not playing at Highland Park High School, and he's not going to watch him play every Friday night. So we've got a coach that wants to be here, a staff that wants to be here, and the first year was here. We won 3-7. Okay, that was good. The next year we go 9-4. That's then this past year we had so many injuries. Whoa. 6-6 ended up on a positive note in the Liberty Bowl, beating Kansas. We beat Kansas in basketball too, so Arkansas owns Kansas. And this year I go to the spring game. I tell you what, I was excited to see first time Jeff was at the game and the first time we see KJ run out there in shoulder pads and pants and he takes off, we look at each other and we say, he's lost about 25 pounds. He looks different.
About 235.
Yeah.
Then from 255 last year Then we see your former Fayetteville Purple Dog, number 16, Isaiah Satanga. He catches the ball, scores a touchdown. Then a few plays later, they say, "Well, let's give it to him on a reverse." That's a good call because I had never found too many people that can catch Isaiah Satanga.
He can run a little bit.
Okay,
Just a little
so
bit.
I'm looking forward from a big year from Isaiah. Just in how are they going to use him? Reverses, things like that. Then I get a look at our running back room. I don't know that there's a better running back room in the country.
Got a lot of similarities
Then,
from when about 2006.
Yes, with Peyton Hillis, Darren McFadden, and Felix Jones, with Rocket Sanders, AJ Green, and Rashad Dubinion.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds you, not to put pressure on them, but it does remind you a lot.
This guy's
of that
already
group.
crowning them. He's going off of coaches. We're gonna have a lot of fun with this.
And then you look at their defense, and you're saying, okay, I believe we're better there. One big thing that's going to be big on defense is excuse me, will Quincy McAdoo be ready to play this year? Big question at cornerback, but we seem to have got all those questions with some answers out of the portal. And linebackers, we're going to be a whole lot, but we're going to be better at linebacker. I look for Chris Paul to become a star. So I'm excited for the team. I'm excited this year. Can't wait. The big question will be, will Brent be able to hold it? Will the mouth be able to hold his tongue about Razorback special teams?
You ain't been on here, all right? And this had we did some practice runs. Brent cannot complain about the dadgum special teams until week 3.
That's
because everybody's got screw ups week 1. I don't give a flip where you're at. There's a screw up on those every time. So Brent is contractually bound. He cannot complain about the damn special teams until after week 3. And after week 3, you can go loose. I'll let you go.
Take the reins off.
Yes, exactly. Let's end it with this. I meant to ask you this earlier. Bunch of construction, new field house.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it. I go to the Razorback basketball game. Just looks like a construction site over there.
That's what it is right now.
And so talk to us about, and we'll get off here, is about the what you're building over there and what you're adding to your program.
So we're building a big, we'll call it just an end zone complex for simplistic terms, on the south end zone where our football field is to be a 3-story building that's being built right now. The bottom floor will consist of some visitor concession stands on the west side, and then it'll be a big weight room, kind of our Olympic weight room for all of our kids to use. And then we'll have coaches' offices, locker rooms for our coaches, and then obviously our locker room for our players on the bottom floor with a vastly updated training room, which we needed for the number of kids that we house in that building. And then the second floor, it'll house track and cross country as well. Some sports broadcasting similar to what we'll be doing. Have a couple of rooms in there. And then the third floor will be a lot of meeting spaces, classrooms that we can utilize for different sports or banquets or, whatever we need to utilize those rooms for in order for our kids. So whether it's team meeting rooms and all that stuff. So very, very big building, very awesome building that will be built that will obviously not just affect football, but it'll affect a whole lot of sports in our community, kids that don't even play sports and meetings in different venues like that. So that'll be that building. And then where our indoor sits, they're also taking that north towards Clinton Street, towards the university by about, an extra 20, 25 yards. They're going to make it 2 levels to where that will be able to give baseball an indoor area to pitch and hit inside. It'll have a cheer. Will have a big, room to where they can rehearse all their performances with mats and stuff they can roll out. And then probably the most unique thing is everybody in Northwest Arkansas in the springtime, they have a huge or in their indoor, there's the pole vault pits in there. But they have actually built an area for them to have a runway and have the pole vault pit underneath or off to the side in the indoor to where it's not
in the way.
They have their own space to where they
yeah.
can go, with their kids. So it's a huge project. That's not the only thing, obviously, that they have. There's multiple things going on within other school sites and things like that. So they're doing, a really good job in Fayetteville as far as updating facilities where they needed to be. And then it'll be one that a lot of people will come look at and try to model off stuff in the future because of what they're doing.
I hadn't seen it, just talking to Steve Jansky, your athletic director, about also building an academic center, testing big in high schools, and they can go in there, a place to test, but also gives y'all an opportunity academically.
Absolutely. And I think the testing room that they have, it'll house over 200 kids to where they can go in there and do any AP testing. They're actually, during the day, will hold like 2 health classes over there pretty much every period of the day as well. So it'll be utilized for a lot of different things throughout the day, not just sports. There'll be people constantly coming and going from there.
Well, we're going to end at this break. Tell everybody how to follow us on Instagram and Twitter and how to see us on YouTube, and we'll end this thing up.
Yeah, we'll be on YouTube probably tomorrow. Well, I guess this will be live, so we'll be watching it. But we'll be on YouTube at Coaches in the Mouth Pod. That's our handle. Coaches in the Mouth Pod is also our Twitter handle, as well as Instagram. So follow us, like it, subscribe, and we'll be posting out content as we get interviews, which is I've got several lined up. So excited for this rest of the summer.
Coach, we really appreciate you coming, and we want to thank our audience for listening. What a great interview with you, and it's all we have fun with this.
Oh, yeah,
At the end of the day, is people ask, "Why are you doing?" We have fun. We're doing the same thing we would do, but we're sitting right here with no microphones, and
just talking.
And that part of it. Appreciate the audience. Tune in, subscribe, like, and we'll be back. Our next guest will be Houston Nutt, which is really tight with Coach Dick, and we're going to bring up your story about the.
You got to tell him.
Oh well, he'll love everybody.
We need to get Coach Womack on here and let him tell the story. It'd be even better. Yes.
It'll be great. Well, thank you. This is Jeff Williams signing off for Brent Bender, Casey Dick, Bray Cook, Coaches in the Mouth. See you next time.